sauce pot because it stays in place for me pretty well. Use your side towels. Don't use the food service towels. We'll go through too many of them that way, or paper towels are fine. Set a bowl in there. That holds your bowl still so that you can pour with one hand and whisk with the other. We have the basic vinaigrette is the one I'm going to start with, is the basic vinaigrette. Today we're going to discuss temporary emulsions and stable emulsions. The book uses the term permanent and temporary. Classical ratio for a vinaigrette is 3 to 1. 3 parts oil to 1 part vinegar. 3 parts oil to 1 part vinegar. That's a pretty good starting point, but you always taste and you might change due to what is going on. You might change due to what vinegar you're using. Some vinegars are more sour, some vinegars are more sweet, so it may want you to change that. You may want to change that ratio due to the taste of the vinegar. You may want to change it due to the taste of the oil. Some oils are stronger or weaker than others. What it's going on. Is it going on Bibb lettuce, which is really mild, so I need a mild vinaigrette? Is it going on curly endive, which is very bitter, so I need something kind of sour to cut through the bitter? So all these factors might change that ratio. Health concern might change that ratio. Today, more modern vinaigrette, I would probably say is more 2 to 1, 2 parts oil to 1 part vinegar, because we understand what too much oil in your diet does for you now. Better than we have in the past. You don't want so much oil that somebody's eating a salad, their lips feel all oily, feel like you got to lick a bunch of oil off your lips going on. There's 2 phases to an emulsion, and we'll go over this downstairs too, but the dispersed phase and continuous phase. The dispersed phase and continuous phase. The continuous phase is almost always a water-based liquid when you're talking about an emulsion. So in this case, it's vinegar. Today for you, I want you following the recipe that I gave you in the handout, which should say white wine vinegar. So I have a 1/4 cup of white wine vinegar, and I'm going to put that in the bottom of the bowl. When you're starting, you almost always start with that continuous phase, the water phase of it. A good example of the continuous phase, or a way to explain it is, it's always touching more water. If I have a droplet of water here, it's touching another droplet of water. The oil is going to be the dispersed phase. It's dispersed out to where it's not touching another droplet of oil. And that's why it needs to go in last, because we need to break it into little droplets as we add it into it. So you'll need your whisk. Another important thing I want you to notice, we have a clear liquid down here. We have a clear liquid in here. So you start whisking and slowly drizzle the oil over the whisk. That was 3/4 cup of salad oil. We're using salad oil, not olive oil on this one, because I want you to balance the sourness of the vinegar. That's all this exercise is about. This is not a vinaigrette that I would put on a salad and serve to somebody. This is the mother sauce. That's the second time I've referred to mother sauce. There are 2 mother sauces in Garde Manger, 2 cold mother sauces. That would be mayonnaise and basic vinaigrette. We would change this into a sherry chipotle vinaigrette, or we'd change this into an Italian vinaigrette. We would change it into something other than just vinegar and oil going on. This has already started to separate. There's already a layer of oil on the top. So if I took a spoon out now and I tried to stick a spoon in there, I just get a coating of oil on the spoon, and when I taste it, it's not going to taste good. It's not going to taste like a vinaigrette. It takes that whisk it, and then taste it. Taste buds on the tip of your tongue are mostly concentrated with sweet. Sweet. So I'm checking how sweet it is at that point. Then I'm taking it and smashing it against the roof of my mouth, kind of moving my tongue forward, and I'm moving that vinaigrette to the back of my palate, between the hard and soft palate. And then I breathe in after I've swallowed that. And if I start coughing, it's too sour, because that's what I'm checking for back there at the back, is the sours in the back of the oral cavity. So you're checking for the sourness there. In between, you would be getting is it too salty, is it not salty enough going on. This was definitely too sour, so what do I want to do when something's too sour? Sweet. Sweet. So I want to add some sugar to that to sweeten that up so that it's not as sour. So I'm going to put a little bit of sugar in there. What about salt? Do I salt it? Why do I salt it? It enhances taste and aroma. All of our life we're taught to use the word flavor to describe both taste and aroma. I want you to think about them separate. I want you to taste this and say, is it sweet, is it sour? And then aroma, what's the aroma of it? This doesn't have much aroma because we're using basic ingredients. But if it was a cilantro vinaigrette, it should have a cilantro aroma going on. They're two different things. Taste and aroma are two different things, so I want you thinking about them separate. But salt does heighten both taste and aroma. It opens the taste buds up. Believe it or not, if something's sweet and I salt it, the salt can actually make it taste a little bit sweeter because it opened the taste buds more up to receive the sweetness that was there. Same thing happens with aroma. It's not very aromatic, then I happen to salt it and season it properly, then the aromatics come out. Now the sugar breaks down pretty quick. Think of what happens to sugar when you pour some water over it. It starts to break down a lot faster than salt does. That's a little bit better balance there. What does the dry mustard do? Emulsify it, help it bind together. So here's some powdered mustard, dry mustard. If I put that in there and whisk that in, which is heavier, the oil or the vinegar? The oil's on top, so the oil would be lighter. The oil goes to the top, the vinegar's heavier, the water base is, so the water base will go to the bottom. That's what's going to happen with every temporary emulsion. Now, we've described temporary emulsion and stable emulsion. What's an example of the stable emulsion? Mayonnaise. Mayonnaise is a stable emulsion. I put that together and it stays together. I'm putting an oil-based product into a water-based product and it's staying. It's staying as I whisk it. We're going to have semi-stable, somewhere between temporary and stable, something that stays together longer than this, but not as much as mayonnaise. The Italian dressing in the grocery store is kind of that way because there's so many herbs and spices in there that those herbs and spices work as a temporary emulsifier. They hold it together a little bit longer. That wouldn't come apart as fast if I had herbs chopped up in it and spices in it. In the restaurant industry, when you're making a vinaigrette for your customers, you're probably better off using fresh herbs. They have a better taste. They're more palatable to the palate. And they'll infuse their aroma into it faster than the dried herbs. The next one that we're going to talk about, so we're going to do the low-fat one that's on your sheet. The ratio for the low-fat is 2-1-1, 2:11. 2 parts thickened fruit juice, 1 part vinegar, and 1 part oil. The thickened fruit juice is there to simulate the viscosity of the oil. When we're making a vinaigrette, the oil is what helps it cling onto the leaves when we toss it on the salad and toss the salad together. The oil holds the vinaigrette to the leaves. if we took all the oil out and we didn't put anything else thick into it, the oil, or would it be, the vinaigrette would be too watery, and the vinaigrette would just run off the leaves. So that's why we need the thicker product. So I'm going to start with the half a cup of juice, and I happen to have apple juice here. Today in the kitchen you can choose your juice. We have apple juice, pomegranate juice, pineapple juice. You could use tomato juice. I have cornstarch, just like any other thickening you've done with cornstarch. The cornstarch has to go into cold liquid, so this is already cold. I don't need to make a slurry because this is already cold. I can just put my cornstarch into that cold apple juice, and I'll whisk that into it. It makes it cloudy. Cornstarch, that's one of the byproducts of cornstarch, is it makes things a little bit more cloudy. I'm going to put this on the stove top, and I'm going to bring it up to a simmer, and then I'm going to shut it off. Reason being, I'm only about 1/8 of an inch thick, and if I simmer it for very long, it's just going to all evaporate away. If you're thickening a sauce or something that's a half of a pot, you're supposed to cook that for 15 minutes to a half hour to cook away that starch taste. In this small batch, I bring it up to a simmer, then I shut it off, and I leave it on the heat so it can continue to cook that starch taste out. You do need to whisk it while it's on the heat because that starch starts to settle on the bottom before it's fully bloomed. So you can see I came all the way up to a simmer. Because it's only 1/8 of an inch, I'm just going to shut it off, and then you can let it sit there for a little bit and let that continue to cook that cornstarch taste out of it. So after you have thickened and you've let that sit a little bit, you'll dump that into a bowl, and you'll put that bowl over an ice bath. Again, this is my half cup of thickened fruit juice, and it's chilled. So now you can see it's done the thickening. You can see how thick that is. So now it's going to be what helps the vinaigrette stick to the product. Now I have 1/4 of a cup of vinegar and 1/4 of a cup of oil. The vinegar, it doesn't matter if you whisk it in slow or you just dump it in. So you put your 1/4 of a cup of vinegar in. So you start with your thickened juice, then the 1/4 of a cup of vinegar. Then you come back with your oil. Now the oil does need to be whisked in to be put into little droplets. That's the basics to this, but this is the one that I want you to make taste good today. This is the one that I want you to want to take home and have for supper tonight going on. So I'm going to do some things to this one to make it taste a little bit better. I'm going to add a little bit of the powdered mustard for taste and to help with the emulsification. I use my basic vinegar ratios, but I'm going to add a little bit of black vinegar. It's used in Chinese cuisine. It's fired rice and spices made into vinegar. And I use just a small amount because it's so big in taste and aroma that it'll come through going on there. With this being apple juice, I like apples and black pepper together, so I'm going to put a little bit of black pepper in this to season it up a little bit with black pepper going on. And secret weapon. Oh. Gotta have just a little bit of zing to it. Now, I put some salt, or did I? I didn't yet. I usually salt that a little bit so it heightens taste and aroma, but I haven't added any sugar yet because it depends on your fruit juice, how sweet your fruit juice was. So you need to put in the other stuff that you're going to add because you may be adding something sweet, and then decide. Pretty tasty there. I think it needs a little bit more of the, just a little more of the black vinegar, and just a touch more of this Tabasco. See, that'd be good on a salad. Okay, now we're going to work on the mayonnaise, which will be the stable emulsion. I'm going to start with the yolk. For your proficiency recipe, it's going to be 1 yolk. And we have a cup of oil going on there. But for a ratio, for you to figure out, if the chef sometime in the future tells you, make me a half gallon of mayonnaise or make me a gallon of mayonnaise, and you have to make it from scratch, here's the ratio for you. The ratio is 8 to 1. 8 parts oil to 1 part yolk. Have you guys dealt with parts ratios very much yet? So, 8 to 1. 8 parts oil, 1 part yolk. There's a lot of oil in mayonnaise. That's why mayonnaise is considered to be too healthy. A gallon. I want a gallon of mayonnaise. How much oil, how much yolk do I need? I have 16 cups of oil, which is going to... No. 2 cups of yolks is right. It'd be 2 cups of yolks. You have the 16, you divide the 8 into it, it gives you the answer 2. The problem with going to 2 yolks instead of 2 cups is you always have to be in the same increment of measurement when you're working with parts ratios. I'm either going to work with part ratios by volume or by weight. I'm going to do 8 parts. In this case, I'm going to do by volume because I have 16 cups. So if I was to do a half gallon, it'd be 8 cups of oil. What's an egg yolk made of? Protein. What's the liquid in it? Water-based or oil-based? Water-based. It's a water-based liquid. So the egg yolk itself is the beginning of our continuous phase. Remember we talked about the continuous phase on the vinaigrette. The egg yolk itself is the beginning of the continuous phase. I'm going to put some more water-based liquid in there. In this case, it's lemon juice. It could be lemon juice. It could be water. It could be vinegar. The vinegar or water, the acid in it helps break down the proteins in the yolk. It'll help break down the proteins in the yolk. But it is a water-based product, so it's spreading the water out even farther, so I have a little bit more water to start my emulsion. So there's my water base to start it out. It already has a natural emulsifier in it. The egg yolk has lecithin in it. Lecithin is a natural emulsifier. But I want more emulsifier, so I'm going to add the powdered mustard in. Biggest problem for students making mayonnaise the first time, adding the oil too quick. Adding the oil too quick. This is a slow process at the beginning. It needs to be almost a drop at a time to be added. You need a good emulsion started before you can start really getting the oil in there. So you want to whisk and get this frothy, which you see it already is. And then it's just a little bit of oil. Make sure you get it incorporated. And then it's a little bit more oil. And you just keep adding a little oil at a time and getting it emulsified. So it's a little at a time, and you make sure you get it incorporated. You can see over here, I have oil that's not incorporated, so I get that incorporated. We have a pretty good sized salad bowl here, or stainless steel bowl, so I have it a little bit on an angle so I can keep it on one side so I can get it deep enough to whisk. The mixer with the whisk attachment is my favorite for making a big batch in the industry. If you get good at it, you can do it in a blender or even in a Robocoo, but you have to get the emulsion started early enough in those, or you just have oil with some egg pureed in it going on. But for my class, I want you making it by hand for your proficiency. After that, like the sandwich day, we make a bunch of spreads. You need like 3 cups of mayonnaise. If you want to try the mixer method out that day, that's fine. I'm just not signing off proficiencies with the mixer method. But anytime you need mayonnaise in my class, you make the mayonnaise. Do not grab for the jar. Once you get about a third of it in, like I have it here, then you can start into a stream, kind of like. So if you see it getting too oily, stop and whisk that in. Now here's what the other problem some of you are going to have, and that's once you get this far, is adding the oil too quick. Right there I added the oil too quick. You see how that went from a thick to a thinner liquid? A lot of people think that at that point they can just go whisk as hard as you can and think it's going to come back together. It won't. I can make it look like it's one color. At that point, it'll basically be a temporary emulsion. See how it looks like it's one color? But now when I roll it on the bowl like this, see how it looks like wet sand sliding down the side? It's because it's breaking apart. You get to that point, you need to stop and fix it before you add any more oil. You need to get this back to a thickened state that'll stay before you add any more oil. 2 ways. One, I just fix one spot. See how I'm whisking right there? I'll just fix that one spot of it. And you can see that's starting to thicken. And I'm just slowly working that into the main batch. So if you work that in too soon, like I just did right there, it's going to break again still. So what you do at that point is you dump that out of the bowl. Now I have a small amount of it left. What I want to do is get that to thicken, so I put a little water in with that. And see how that thickened and came back together? Now I can take the broken mayonnaise that I had and I add it back like it was the oil. Just a little at a time. So that's what I had that I was rolling around the bowl and looked like sand. I added more water to it, but yet it's less runny because it is a good emulsion. It's not as thick as mayonnaise yet, is it? Or what you're used to as mayonnaise. The more water you add to it, the less thickness it's going to have. If you don't have to add any water to it, it could end up getting too thick on you. You can break it by getting it too thick, having it too tight of an emulsion. More oil into it will thicken it. So there we have mayonnaise. Again, the proficiency for this is about the emulsion. It's not about the taste. You're going to work on taste of mayonnaise in the advanced class. Do not throw it away because it becomes one of your other proficiencies. The other proficiency it becomes is the emulsified vinaigrette. So I have 1/3 cup of vinegar here, and I whisk this into there. That's the difference between your book and me. I want you to go about it this way. Make a good emulsion and then whisk your third of a cup of vinegar in. Your book wants you to put this vinegar in at the very beginning with the egg yolk and the mustard. It's really hard to get an emulsion started that way. This way is a little bit simpler. Now you can see that's a little bit more the consistency of a Caesar dressing, where you'd get a nice coating on your greens. This one, again, we need the seasoning, so the salt's going to help it out. But it's definitely oil and vinegar. It's still going to be too sour just like the other, so it needs some sugar in there to help balance that out. You need to taste this one. So, I'll tell you right now, this is not going to be your favorite. It's going to taste like kind of sour oil. That's what it tastes like. But it's the base. Again, this is what I have right here. Could easily be made into a Caesar dressing by adding some cheese, garlic, anchovy, lemon, Worcester, and some more mustard. Then you pretty much have a Caesar going on right there, Caesar dressing. So think of this just as the base. Taste it for the creaminess, taste it for, is it too sweet, is it too sour? That's all I want to know. I wouldn't serve this to anybody like it is right now. Any questions about that? The mayonnaise or the emulsified vinaigrette?